If you're a compound archer, you have four main categories of releases to choose from. You have the wrist strap release that uses your index finger to touch off the trigger. You have a thumb release, you have hinge releases, and then you have a tension activated release, which doesn't have a trigger at all. You don't need to rotate it. You set it to a certain pressure amount, and then when you reach that pressure, it shoots. But today we're going to be talking about thumb releases, and this is one of the most common entryways into people going from a wrist strap release to a handheld release. So, as the name implies, the thumb trigger has a trigger that you activate with your thumb. So, your thumb rests here, you apply pressure, and it releases. Pretty simple to use, but there are a lot of techniques, and we'll get into that later. Alright, so you've pulled your new release out of the box. It's time to start adjusting it so it fits your hand. How you want to adjust it is so your release is going to sit in between your first and your second joint of all 3 or 4 or 2 fingers, whatever style release that you bought. And then you want your thumb to be in a natural position so it's not having to, cramp up your hand reaching for the trigger. So you want to move your trigger into a place where you can reach it naturally, and we're going to fine tune that later, so don't worry too much about it. And then if your if you can twist that thumb barrel around, again, you just want to feel comfortable in a natural position. Once you have it set generally, you can tighten down those screws. Alright, and then don't grab your bow just yet. I would recommend using a shot trainer, or you could take a piece of string, tie a knot so it makes a big loop. That way you're able to test out the release and familiarize yourself with it before you pick up your bow and start shooting it. So you have it on the shot trainer. I need to adjust mine. Alright, I think that should fit. It'll be close. Alright, so your shot trainer's adjusted, and now just get used to drawing with your fingers on the release. And the next thing you want to get used to is your new anchor point. So if you're coming from a wrist strap release, you're going to have a different anchor point and different reference points for your anchor. You're still going to have the string touching the tip of your nose, still looking through your peep sight and aligning it. You might have to adjust your peep height here once you start playing around with shooting your bow. But for most people, what they find is the best way to anchor with a handheld release is your index finger and your middle finger create a V, and you place your jawbone in between that V. So you're at full draw, you find that steady anchor point, and then place your thumb on the release and just kind of feel and see if that position feels comfortable. I want to rotate that thumb peg just a little bit. That feels much more comfortable. And then you can start applying pressure to your trigger and setting it off. Now when you go to your bow, I would recommend starting with your thumb trigger set a little heavy. You don't want to start with a super light trigger, just so you're not afraid to touch that trigger and apply pressure to it, especially as you're learning different techniques or experimenting with them. So another just little tip to keep in mind. Once you feel comfortable with the new release, anchoring with it, it feels good in your hand, then you can move to your bow. Start up close to the target. Don't worry about hitting anything. Just get used to feeling the new release. Anchor, get used to your anchor point, look through your peep, and if you need to adjust your peep height, I would address that then. Of course, an archery shop is going to be great to help you out with that. They'll put in the press, tie in the new adjusted peep, tie it in again, and you'll be good to go. Alright, so up until now, you probably have just been using your thumb and pushing on the trigger to get the release to go off. That obviously works, but there are some other ways to set off a thumb trigger release. And we're not going to go into detail with those, but there are some great coaches on YouTube that have tutorials on how to do that. Each technique is going to be a little bit different, and that's a good thing because you'll be able to watch all those videos and then see which one's going to work best for you. So I'm just going to rattle off some names right now. George Riles has several good videos on release aid execution. Paige Pierce has one on how to set off any release style with back tension. That's a good one to check out. Levi Morgan has a series on target panic where he talks about how to properly set up and shoot any release aid, and he does talk about thumb triggers as well. And John Dudley also has a bunch of videos on shooting a handheld style release. Alright, just to review the steps for when you get your new release. First thing you want to do is adjust it to fit your hand. Test it out on a shot trainer or just a piece of string. Start with the tension pretty tight. Get used to your new anchor point with that putting your jawbone between the V created by your index and your middle finger. And then start exploring all the different methods there are for executing a thumb trigger release properly. I'm Scott with Archery 360. We'll see you on the next one.